and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast. We search far and wide for story elements, chop them up, and make a story stew for you. I am, of course, Levi.
And I'm Seth.
No Reed today, and we are here to tell you a story. I apologize if I'm kind of tired and I'm a little bit sick, so I apologize if I sound weird. So, should I give a little recap of the story so far, and then we'll dive in?
You're going to tell.
At first I thought you were doing they're taking the hobbits to Isengard, but you were doing the Sir Robin's minstrels from Monty Python, right?
No, when the Swamp Castle guy's kid falls out of the tower and he comes back and he's like, yeah, like, I'll tell you all about it. And everyone starts to kind of go into song and dance. And the guy's like, no singing. And they're all like starting to.
That's right. That's right. I remember that. So what we have is a world. As far as history goes, as far as the beginning of the universe goes, there's these beings who kind of hold up. Each one is assigned to a various portion of science or technology or science or structure, and they have a will, but their will is mostly exerted at performing the function of their system. So there's one, there's one that's gravity, and it kind of it's always holding people down. And there are sort of these lower beings, and then there's a little bit higher beings that are kind of given to watch over whole planets and to kind of orchestrate all of reality and keep it all in concert with each other, right? So that so the E equals MC squared is the same here as in the Andromeda galaxy. And we had a dissenter. He was the orchestrator of Mars, and he waged war on the other beings and was finally locked away into Mars, on Mars. Kind of turned off, like he was stripped of any way he had to begin to acquire power, and because of that he kind of starved. And some people like to say died, but most of these beings that put them in there, they know that he's still alive. He's just like very weak. So fast forward to sort of our modern day, the Infinity and Beyond Corporation is blowing up a bunch of nuclear warheads at the polar ice caps of Mars in order to try and get an atmosphere to start, to heat up, introduce a bunch of oxygen to the atmosphere, into the air, try to get an ozone layer to start being formed. And then the history is that there was a sort of a, how do I say this? Where was it in Portugal, Seth?
Yeah, I think we picked Portugal.
Yeah. So there was like this leader who was kind of very charismatic, and people kind of got behind him and kind of they started to follow him, and he was kind of making these kind of crazy groundswell levels of achievement. And then all of a sudden, like a couple of countries near Portugal, like buckled and just said, like, we want you to be our leader too. And so then he had that country and then this country and this country. And it was kind of like going a little bit out of control, but he was like, just through political maneuvering and talking with them and organizing things, he was just like acquiring all of these countries. Everyone wanted to be underneath this leader. But now he's died. And so now there's like this kind of tense power struggle moment where is someone going to be controlling all of these countries? Are they going back to where they were before? What's happening? Is that an accurate thing, Seth?
Yeah.
Then for the next week, I had reoccurring character, which from the nanobot shape, I can't remember the name of the episode now. The nanobot eggs. Is that what it was? Episode 2 of Wait, It Gets Better is where I got the character from, which is a soldier, the egg-shaped nanites, and the gardener. That's the episode, but where there's a soldier whose mind was he was digitized essentially in the egg-shaped nanites in the gardener. He was like this. He would protect this gate from whoever wanted to come through, But this was much before that, when he was just like newly commissioned as this ship's kind of central brain. And so he kind of controls this ship in its kind of totality. And then eventually at some point he'll become part of the quartet from the egg-shaped nanites and the gardener. But for now, he's like this multi-thousand ton sort of cruise liner, this like giant spaceship. And he can kind of control all the modules and everything. And he can see through all the cameras and hear through all the microphones. That was the recurring character. I don't remember what the wise old woman was, and that's on me. So maybe if someone remembers.
I'm not sure if Reed had a name for her. I'm pretty sure he did. He normally does, but it escapes me. She had something to do with something scientifical, but also health related, and was somewhere inside of the Infinity and Beyond Corporation, I believe, in some of its technology studies and kind of pushing towards some science and health directions with, I can't remember if it was heart related stuff or mind related stuff, but I guess that's on YouTube, but it was something along those lines.
And then Seth had Hero, which was a journalist, right?
Correct.
Great. What did you have for this week?
This week I had Unique Vehicle.
And I have Random Insert. So I have a really cool random insert that I feel like will get the story going, because this is episode 3, which typically is where we wrap up the story. So I'd like to hear Unique Vehicle, though, if you'd want to tell it to me.
Yeah. So I was thinking, as far as the Unique Vehicle, something, because that has to do with the journalist, is that he acquired information and had the conundrum of how to present it to the public or not to the public. But the fact that people like on a 99 percentile lose their minds when they go to space. And so it's created a problem. And so for all these years, they've sent up satellites and, that's why they've always just
I remember that now.
Rovers to Mars for the umpteenth time. And, kind of like, oh yeah, in 5 years we plan to do this mission, and then in 5 years it's like another robot, and it's another robot, and then there's a accident, and on one of the missions or something like that kind of keeps everybody strung along. But yeah, the thing is that it's a risky business to go to space, and they haven't really found a way around that as far as getting people there. So one of the things that develops that at some point is and I hate to say Stargate, but that's kind of the idea, some kind of like a quantum portal that they're starting to use. It's like just hitting the scene, where they can do some shipping. It's cutting down on, it's kind of a cutting edge, but what they're developing is that it's bridging that gap where perhaps they can't send someone to space, but if they could send the other coordinated portal or gate, to Mars, someone could then theoretically walk from one space to the other, and that's what they're developing. And they're like small versions of it are being used in like the post office or some major shipping companies, and so they're going to be able to try and use this to solve the issue of putting people in space, but being able to, walk organic life from one to the other.
Cool. That's great. Which is really interesting. So, so when a long time ago, thousands of years ago, when Mars, this god of this world, was sort of starting to rebel, since he's not, he's classified as a deity, but not like a true deity that is like omniscient and omnipresent in every moment. And so what he did was he created his army, and his army, he sort of learned, his biggest critique of whoever it was that made them, or whoever it was that would try to take authority over him, is that you should have taken it and never given it back. And so when he creates his army, it's not a army of kind of like how the US Army is, where it's like you can break it down in cells, not in cells, but like you can break it down into the smaller and smaller groups. And there's enough information passed along that they will all be able to work towards the mission. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Not like that at all. So this was, I think, one of the reasons why they were able to defeat Mars is because he wanted to be in complete control, direct and complete control of all of these armies that he was like growing. I imagine they were organic, kind of bug-like.
Buggers.
Yes, exactly. Buggers from what's that from? Ender's Game? Yeah.
Ender's Game.
And he started to churn them out, and there were obviously bigger ones and smaller ones, but that's not the point. The point was that they were all controlled by complex frequencies, right? Sort of complex frequency modulation. So they didn't have really any brains themselves. In fact, that's how they received power as well. That's how they like received energy, was like beaming, radio waves. You can capture electricity from radio waves because it's just modulated electricity, right? And so this was this thing, and he used it to attack Earth and all the other planets. And this is one of the reasons why this is one of the reasons why humans on Earth have such an affinity for music, because we used frequencies and radio waves and the vibrations of things to sort of combat these, a long time ago. And it's just kind of stuck as a cultural reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To the place that towns in Europe, it's like, well, if we can cover all of Europe in the sound of bells, then we can protect ourselves. Right. And there's some underlying truth to that. But the reality is that these were sort of habits and memories that were passed on. So what's happened now is the nuclear warheads that went off on Mars have one of the things that Mars, the god, it was taken away from him was all of his sort of engines of generation, right? So all of his incorruptible army, not incorruptible, but indestructible army, couldn't be destroyed. It could only be turned off. And after it was turned off, Mars became kind of like the dumping ground. And then Mars also became kind of the no-go zone. Because if you bring too much frequency modulation to Mars, then you start to allow for systems that the god has set up to start sort of coming online and, turning on and starting to power up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you don't want to bring it too close, because then all of a sudden it's gonna start turning on. And so you can imagine what happened when the Infinity and Beyond Corporation blew up 7 nuclear warheads at each polar ice cap. It was like a jump start, right? And this is one of the things that they were really shocked with, how quickly the atmosphere was forming. I think Reed even said that in the first episode, is that they were kind of shocked with how quickly things were working and happening. Because what happened is that this was like a jump start to all of the machines that Mars had on Mars. Oh, this is ridiculous. That he had on Mars, and now it's it's all turning on, right? And people are like shocked and awed because it's crazy. It's like there's more chemicals and things being released into the atmosphere. It's like the ozone layer is forming faster than we thought it would on Mars. And everyone's kind of cheering, and aren't we just so sophisticated and awesome? But the reality of what's happening is all of the machines are turning on, and Mars is kind of once again kind of growing in power. So that is my random insert. How was it?
Cool.
Yeah. So he's got an army again. I kind of imagine them a bit like the xenomorphs from the Alien, a bit like the Zerg from StarCraft. So kind of crustacean, kind of like the Tyranids, the Tyranids from Helldivers. Kind of crustacean, crab-like, really big hulking ones, little tiny ones that rush along the ground, big ones that spray acid, but really simple bug-like, but of lots of different kinds, and Mars has been kind of sitting Mars, the god, has been sitting on Mars, like screaming ever since he woke up when like the first rover started to land, right? And they started to send radio signals back and forth, right? And they started to do communications, and like that little bit of power like woke him up from this sleep. And the more and more and more that's happening has just been feeding him more and more and more. And then now here he is, now in like 2 months, he'll have 100 million strong army, and then use this quick transportation technology that you were just talking about. And, bing, bang, boom, Earth invasion number 2,
Yeah. Now it's kind of unfortunate. So I don't know if, that'll be a happy ending or sad ending, because I know Reed had a happy ending. So we'll never know what a happy ending to this story would look like.
Yeah.
But you had mentioned Helldivers, and given kind of the political scene on Earth,
right?
Like I could imagine like the ending kind of being like they're already almost in kind of like a one world federation. Most of the first world countries are all kind of, holding on, and some kind of power structure holds on to that, unites everybody going, oh, we could reach the stars, but look, our new home is, overrun, kind of that whole bit.
Right.
And then using this technology to like drop space marines in.
Right. It could even be something like this journalist sees kind of sees that the world needs to unite because of this new force, and kind of predicts the overwhelming outcome that's going to happen by uniting under a hegemon sort of thing, and then is like, but they're going to get away with it, and he's kind of sitting there like, I can push the button and release all the information and tell the truth and, disassemble all the lies, but that will inevitably cause sort of mass chaos. And then these things that have been arriving will continue to arrive, and then we'll all die because we won't be organized. Or I can let this kind of authoritarian government rise up, and I'm not America, but the world will be saved. It's like, well, what am I supposed to do? That's kind of a question for the age.
Yeah. Because I wouldn't see that as like grandly, it's a conundrum, because neither of them is like right. Obviously it imposes a threat, but the answer to that threat of reuniting under kind of a hegemony isn't exactly a great outcome either.
Right.
But I think it could work. I was thinking a lot of times we use, what is it? There's another thing I was thinking of too, with like the whole, I don't know if arachnid is the right phrase for it. I think that's spiders, isn't it?
Yes, arachnid is spiders.
Okay, so that's not the right word. Crustacean. So like in a lot of our stories, we hail, like we use the hero as in kind of a accomplishing something good or, altruistically heroic. But one of the things that crossed my mind was Starship Troopers, right? Or we mentioned Helldivers.
Right.
Where it's in and of itself, it's like a propaganda thing, right? And so the propaganda for the pro thing that's happening from the outside viewer, you can kind of see that it's like odd. Does that make sense?
It's odd, like it, because it's fanatical.
Kind of, yeah. But from the perspective, I bring up Starship Troopers because it's basically propaganda, right? And so someone that brings that about from that perspective of the like the people like looking back telling the story, or from that perspective, right, would heroize someone who in their eyes did the right thing and brought the world
right.
together,
Oh, absolutely.
right? And so like it was just like a hitch in my mind, like not being cool with it for a moment and then going like, well, what if this whole story thing is like from the perspective of the hegemony, right? And so you have this guy that, turns this information over or doesn't, not necessarily for altruistic or for the benefit of humanity, but does the thing that puts this in power. And so that power system sees him as a hero.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so like the viewer or the reader might look at it and be like, wow, what a scumbag that like selfishly turned the world over to an authoritative, I'm having a hard time saying words, authoritative power structure under a one world hegemony. That's not cool. And yet it's played off like he's the guy that pulled it all together and we have this great, hegemony thanks to him and, his efforts to,
Right.
Pull the world back from turmoil. Right. And from that perspective, he'd be a hero. I don't know. It just,
Absolutely.
That's how it clicked in my head that it's like, anyways, if that makes sense. But
yeah. So it's told from the perspective of the new government. So this is essentially a partial or part and partial I'm not getting words either. Propaganda piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what it could be the memoirs of whoever it is the hero. Not whoever is the hero, but whoever it is the whoever it is that gets power after this world leader dies, Who is it? So what it could almost be, this would be a kind of interesting story if it was kind of more just like a drama spy novel, right? And all the crazy things that were happening, right? All the alien invasions and all that you didn't learn about until much later. And it was just kind of like this drama political novel about this guy who'd kind of united all these countries and then died. And now it was about like a couple of people and like their ability to kind of manipulate certain things and then try and put themselves forward and like, do some campaigning and like get to be the person that is going to take over this thing. And, and it follows this, it could be like a president from one of the countries that abdicated to him. It could be a general, it could be a lot of different people. But it just follows his journey. And then all of a sudden that the first half of the book or the first book is all about like this kind of political intrigue of him, he was an aide of this guy and this guy trusted him. And so he, puts his name forward to be, to be the hegemon. And it's like this kind of political and, there's some espionage and stuff like that. And then he gets the briefing, right? He becomes it at the end and he gets the briefing and the briefing is literally, it's a stack of papers 2 inches thick and it's all from the, To Infinity and Beyond Corporation, basically saying, you have been tasked with unifying the world against this threat that is so great, we have no idea how to deal with it.
Here's our tools on the table.
Yeah. And just kind of lays out. And then all of a sudden, this kind of, interesting drama, kind of spy intrigue, political book becomes a science fiction book in like the last chapter, and then the next book is you get all this background information about the beginning of the universe and these gods and, people have stopped calling on their names. And so they kind of went to sleep and they fought and there's all these things. And then it kind of marries that political intrigue stuff to this science fiction stuff. And then becomes kind of like a military, kind of like a spy novel or like those Tom Clancy books that read like so much, except, with, hordes of crazy scalies or whatever they call them, they got to call them something. And then maybe at some point turns into, so it goes from this novel into this sort of science fiction, and then moves as it melds from science fiction. That's where it kind of turns into propaganda, right? And at first, the soldiers get totally bowled over by these enemies. They're 10 feet tall. They've got razor sharp talons. They've got impregnable armor.
And they can leap about.
What did you say?
They've got teeth and they can leap about. Look at the bone.
But no, they, and then all of a sudden the book switches to the propaganda, right? And then you have this hero that arrives and he can, take them down. And then all of a sudden you see the reality of First Contact gets obscured with the fact that what the government needs is for people to be 100% behind them and giving them all of their tax dollars and all of their children to be used as soldiers, because if not, we're going to die, So the story starts kind of political intrigue, gets science fiction, and then kind of ends up as this kind of crazy story, this crazy propaganda story that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I kind of like that as a story arc.
I think it works.
Yeah. And, and at some point there's an invasion onto Earth, and then they push it back, and the sentient ships, the sentient ship fleet comes and does a bunch of crazy, and things get crazier and crazier and crazier and more exaggerated and more crazy as it goes along. Finally to end in what? Just total victory? What do you think?
I think being that it kind of ends in the propaganda arm of it, I think it kind of ends with, kind of that call to we beat off the invasion on Earth, and, for the, here would be a weird ending, right? This is it finally it ends with the starting to build the city, the imperial city of Mars, right? To join this and, push them back on their own territory, blah, 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 for the hegemony and, for Earth or super Earth or whatever they call it.
Right.
Right. And kind of at the budding of this. And then it's it ends with someone closing the book. Right. And then putting it back on the library shelf and it doing a time jump, where then it's you're left with it's the library in the city that is talked about as the city to be built and held.
Yeah.
The new shining city on the hill in the new world kind of idea, right? It's the same name. It's but it's the public library at that city, right? And they put the book away in the old dusty book, and some comment gets made about the people now. It's somehow making the reference that the city is the city they're talking about, but then kind of either making a joke reference of is this history or science fiction? Right.
Right.
The things that people come up with, about how the things happened, 1800 years ago, and kind of laugh it off or whatever. And so it's kind of ends with kind of this, cause now here's the city, it's at peace. It's it is what they envisioned, and that is the world that they live in.
Right.
And the start of it, as is recorded in whatever this book is laughed off now as, an eccentric or exaggerated way, or is something like that, where it has that hinge of well, obviously they're living in the city that they claim to want to establish there, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's kind of what came to mind, but
yeah, I kind of like it because you get to see kind of the end result of sort of that style of propaganda, which is the total complete abolition of the past, the total complete rewriting of the past. I like it. I think it's good. I think it's so good. I'm going to say, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait, It Gets Better. If you liked this episode, please let us know. Send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com. If you want to find us on Twitter, you can do so at Ep-3 we'd be happy to follow you back. Tell your friends about this show. Tell your enemies about the show. Tell your mom. Tell your dad. And don't forget, at the end of the day, just wait, because it gets better. Bye.